Hello, everybody. We have a special live stream in store for you today. I am going to be answering as many questions as possible today, just trying to get as many of your addiction recovery questions answered as we possibly can. And we got a lot of things happening today, so I have actually a co-pilot here with me today to help me manage all that, and that is my son Weston. And maybe we'll get him to pop on here and say hello to you in just a minute. But he's going to be helping moderate the chat comments and he's going to be picking the questions to put up here on the screen. So you guys give Weston some really good questions to pick. And it's super helpful if you put some little like question marks before your question or write the word question in all caps or something like that. That just helps us pick out the questions from just the chat. And that's super helpful for us. But to get us started, I know the holidays are approaching. There's usually a lot of anxiety around holidays when it comes to having an addicted loved one because you're just never quite sure how things are going to go. So I thought maybe we would start out I want to share with you an email that I got just recently. And it's a story really, that I think should leave you feeling hopeful. And there's just a lot to unpack in this email. So we're going to call this person Amanda. Her name is not Amanda because anytime I share someone's story, I always change their identifying details for privacy purposes. But this is what Amanda says. I just wanted to let you know that your methods truly work. Living with addiction is really difficult, and this past week has been tough too. Your videos and teachings make it a little easier for us to navigate these uncertainties. I keep trying to do all you teach, and slowly things are starting to get better. My husband never even touched alcohol until 2016. He started drinking socially in 2017, and things really started to escalate during COVID. And it became really noticeable by 2020. Bad all the time, missing work, fights with his family, financial strain, feeling sick in the morning, losing weight, a DUI, and blackouts. But I can tell that things are finally starting to shift. I'm hearing a lot of change talk, and I know in my heart he wants to quit alcohol. Recently, my husband quit for a couple of weeks, but yesterday he had a bad day at work and drank alcohol to cope. He ended up in a blackout, and I had to have friends pick him up. I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but after that, he agreed to go and see a psychiatrist. The doctor feels like he's really trying to quit, but he's having a tough time with cravings and stress. So the doctor prescribed him a medicine that actually makes you sick if you drink. And I'll tell you guys what that medicine is in a minute in case you don't know. I can tell that my husband's truly committed to starting his medications and conquering this alcohol problem. I know that things won't fix overnight, but I think he's on the right path, which is helping calm my anxiety. Again, thank you so much for everything. I would have been lost without you. You're touching lives around the world with your videos. Now, let's see here. There was another piece that this person sent me. There was another piece that Amanda sent me, and I tried to put it all in writing here so I could read it to you. But basically, Amanda said that she wanted me to tell you guys that things aren't just like all of a sudden she started doing the techniques and things were better immediately. There was still a lot of ups and downs. There's still some fighting occasionally, but it used to be they would fight all the time, and now it's just occasionally. And she tries to get it right back on track after those fights. But progressively, she's seeing a shift out of the bad guy role. Her husband is taking things more and more and more seriously. And so I want to break down some of these things, not only just to tell you Amanda's story and what she's seeing, but I want to show you why that this is such a hopeful story and how things progress in a real life recovery way. Things just don't get better in recovery. It's not like all of a sudden somebody realizes there's a problem and they go from sick to well in a straight line. And neither does the family. It's kind of like 2 steps forward, a step back, 2 steps forward, a step back. And that's okay. And I want you guys, if you're watching as a family member, to have that kind of grace and patience with your loved one, because you're going to have that kind of grace and patience with yourself. There is some trial and error involved in this process. And just because you maybe relapse back and get yourself in the bad guy role and like lose your cool or something, it doesn't mean that it's not working. It doesn't mean it's over. And the same thing for them. Just because they have a lapse back into the substance use doesn't mean it's not working, doesn't mean it's not trying. Everybody's trying to change habits that have been going on for a very long time. And obviously, that's not easy. Now, in this particular story with Amanda's husband, this, he's in that phase where he's trying to get sober, and it's like working sometimes, like he'll get some days sober and then back and forth. And that's pretty normal in the process. And it's okay to just allow that to happen. So if you have a loved one who's doing that, and they get a couple weeks sober and then they lapse back, it's going to make you want to panic. And that's natural because you're thinking, I just can't do this again because it's been so horrible. Totally get it. But that learning process is quite necessary. And I just want you to understand, it doesn't mean that they don't mean it. It just means they're learning and they're trying to figure it out. Like riding a bike, you're going to fall down sometimes. And that's not to give them an excuse or to give them a free pass. I'm just telling you that's the way that this process goes. And if you understand that, you'll tolerate that better. But this past time when the husband had the really bad day at work and then he drank and then it ended like really badly, it was a blackout, the friends had to go get him. That was obviously a wake-up call. And what he's learning is, okay, I need some additional help. Like I'm trying to do this on my own. I really mean it, but it's not working. I need to take the next step. This is the example of when you apply the empathy and the love and the care and the concern, and you let the natural consequences happen, that's when the learning really starts to take place. One of the things that Amanda said to me, which I thought was just spot on, I'm just totally going to steal it from her, is she said in her own mind, she's kind of gone from trying to tell her husband that he loves her, but make him feel loved when he's around her. That is the shift, because we say all the time, I love you, I just want the best for you, but it doesn't feel great when someone says that to you. Maybe you've been on the other side of that at some point and you know what I'm talking about. It's almost like there's this burden or expectation, but if you help someone feel loved, it calms that frontal lobe and actually allows the learning to take place. So I hope that gives you guys a sense of hope and understanding about the process, so that every time you see a little bump in the road, it does not mean the end. When we're seeing those good things and a little bump and good things and a little bump, that means we're moving along, we're learning and we're growing. All right, let's take some questions. Weston, you want to say hello to everybody? I don't even know if your mic's on, but I will pop you on the screen.
Hello.
Okay. Say hello to everybody.
Hey.
You're so charming, talkative. This is Weston. He's my son. He's home for the holidays. He is Weston. Do you guys know what American Ninja Warrior is? The thing with like the obstacles? That's Weston's thing. He loves to do American Ninja Warrior, and he has a YouTube channel. If you want to check it out, or if you have a kid that likes that kind of thing, it's called Weston's Rules. All right, Weston, you got our questions up here?
Yep.
Off. You ready to co-pilot?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. All right. Here is our first question Weston has for us. Amber, why doesn't my daughter care about us yet alone, her son and her daughter? She's already had treatment, came back within 2 weeks, and had a relapse. And this, is there more to that one? Yeah. Was back in March, and she's still at it. I have her 2 kids, and I'm desperate and broken and very lost in all of this. Thank you for doing this live. I actually have a whole video called Can People with Addiction Really Love You? And the thing of it is it's like, to understand it, I think you have to divide love into 2 different categories. Most people see love as like a feeling of affection, but I try to think about love as an action, right? Can someone behave in a loving way? Now, an addicted person can have love in their heart for you. They can feel affection for you and care about you. But most of the time, if they're in active addiction, that active addiction part of their brain overrules that feeling as far as their behavior is concerned. And so a lot of times that addiction will cause them to act in not loving ways towards you. So if you mean love is in the feeling, yes, they can. If you mean love as in the action, the consistency, the putting your needs first, looking out for you, caring about your feelings, stuff. It's not that they can't do that, but they probably can't do that consistently. And that's where it feels like, why doesn't my addicted loved one love me? Now, that's just the start of it. You got to layer in on top of that there's a lot of rationalizations and justifications. Maybe the person's saying, well, they're just better off without me. Well, my kids, I'm probably just running their life anyway. Might as well just leave them with the parents. So there's just a lot of complicated processes that go on in here. And if you will think back, you probably remember your daughter before the addiction, after the addiction, and it feels like two different people. And when your daughter comes out of this and gets clean and sober, she's going to be another person. It's just like, it's almost like someone's been, what's the word? When I can't think of the word. When the ghosts take over your body, what is that called? I forget. Anyways, we'll come back to that. Weston. All right. Thank you so much, Amber. What can I say to calm my, is it addict husband or alcoholic husband, when he insists I'm lying, paranoia, marijuana vape pen, and possible meth use? This is a great question, Elisa, because when you're dealing with someone with paranoia, that means they're having some delusion and psychosis, usually when it's paranoia to the level that you're describing here, which does come along with the substances that you named. And a delusion, the literal definition of delusion means it's like a falsely held belief despite evidence, which means there's no rationalizing with someone that has a delusion. Like, you can't give them evidence and then them change their mind. You can't have a discussion about it and have them see it clearly. And I know that is like very, very maddening on your end, because the more you actually talk about it, it almost makes it worse. I call it like a spider web effect. If you try to give them a piece of evidence, look, like, here's my mom, she can back me up, she can say that's exactly what happened, whatever it is, then they're going to spider web a new branch to make their own delusion make sense in their mind, which is, well, your mom's in on your side, or your mom, you told your mom what to say before you came, and it can get even really bizarre sometimes with like really crazy beliefs. If you try to say the government's not watching you, there's no cameras here. And then they might say something like, yeah, but they're invisible cameras and only I can see them. Right. So it's like, if you try to reason with it, the delusion sprouts more legs and it sort of weaves itself back in there in a more complex way. So the answer to that is, you cannot convince them of something that they believe in a delusion. It is either the delusion will either pass on its own if it's substance related delusion. And if it doesn't, sometimes you need like medication to help that pass. And sometimes people need medical help to get that to happen. But I'll go ahead and tell you this, Elisa, is that even after the delusion goes away for people and they come back to themselves, you got to remember that experience was real for them. So sometimes they still kind of like linger. Like, did that really happen? Like, was she really lying to me? So don't be surprised if even after they get better, that's still lingering. And so I will tell you just to sort of try to honestly sidestep it, because you're not going to therapy it out of somebody. I mean, I don't have any power to make a delusion go away. No one does. You cannot reason with it. That's what makes it a delusion. And there you go. You got to be on top of these questions. You got to be ready with them. All right. My son has narcolepsy, ADHD, and major depressive disorder and substance use disorder. And the psychiatrist doctor won't increase his ADHD meds until he gets another sleep study, last one in 2022, and the UA, which I'm assuming you mean is urinary analysis, like a pee drug screen, before the sleep study can't come. So basically, there's multiple problems here going on, and they all are sort of tied in together. But the doctor is kind of like, well, I'm not gonna increase the ADHD medicine until you have a sleep study, and you can't have the sleep study until you pass a drug test. So this doctor is hesitant to give more stimulant medication, probably because the doctor probably has an idea that this person has a substance abuse issue, and they want to make sure that the med increase is needed actually and is not just a symptom of the substance use disorder. So this is a doctor being cautious. which I totally get is frustrating. But when doctors are not cautious and they give your addicted loved one everything they want, it's even more frustrating when they don't have a discerning eye, when they won't like require them to like take a test or something. So it's kind of frustrating on both ends. I totally get that. But if the issue is ADHD and substance abuse, and you're like, well, we need to get the ADHD better, you're not really going to get that ADHD better anyway, whether the doctor increased it or not, until the substance use disorder is stabilized. I mean, that's just all there is to it. It's kind of like if someone's depressed and they're drinking, the drinking can't just continue and then you treat the depression go away. It just won't work that way. You really do need to treat the substance abuse first. And I'm not saying that they can't take ADD medicine and be in recovery. It really just depends on what the addiction is. I mean, it's kind of questionable, but I have to have a lot more history of that. But I am saying you have to treat the addiction first. And I think that's probably what the doctor's holding the limit out on. He's just not saying that. What's our next question, Weston? Oh, you're good. You're fast now. Clean because he's on primidone for essential tremors and gabapentin for nerve pain. He's on 7 meds, and they want him off, including his MAOI and Rexulti. This doesn't sound safe to me to get him off. I think what this person is saying is that their addicted loved one whatever this treatment place is won't treat him. They want him to come off of all the medicines. And treatment centers are really different about that. Some do require you to come off of everything, even if it's like Zoloft or something like that. And those treatment centers, and I don't know anything about who you're working with or anything, but a lot of times those treatment centers are like nonprofit or religious ran or some other kind of treatment centers. And a lot of times the way they want you to come off all the medicines because they don't have medical staff to administer, monitor. They just don't feel equipped to do medicine management and addiction treatment. It's pretty common that if somebody's going to get addiction treatment somewhere, they want you to come off of the drug you're addicted to, right? But some of those other medicines that aren't necessarily addictive medicines, most treatment centers will allow for that, as long as it's not something that you're abusing. And as long as it's not something that, if it's like an inpatient facility or sober living, it's not something that someone else there could abuse, because they also don't want to put other people at risk. Like if you're living in a sober living and they know you have whatever medicine and somebody else there, that might be their substance of choice or whatever, they don't want to put other people at risk. So it's common for treatment centers to say, you can't come in here on these medicines because they're dangerous for people with substance use disorders. But those other ones, like what you're talking about, it's not that common to be asked to come off of those. So I'm not sure why the treatment provider wants that, but it does happen occasionally. So you might want to look for a different treatment provider. But I don't know. I don't know the whole story there. So Weston, what's our next question? Meds, but narcolepsy. Is that a continuation? Meds, but with narcolepsy, he gets very tired during the daytime. He's 23. I think this must be the ADHD med question. He's 23 and he's getting frustrated. My husband thinks his drinking doesn't and shouldn't affect me. How do I explain to him in a productive way? You don't explain to him in a productive way. You back out of the way, you get out of that bad guy role and let him do what he's going to do, and he's going to see that it affects you. It's pretty common that people early in the stages of change think that. In fact, I've had a lot of clients tell me that thing, like, I don't know why she gets upset. Like, she doesn't even know it when I drink half the time. It doesn't really bother her. It's just that if she knows I'm drinking, she gets upset just because she knows it. Like, that's what they say. That's usually what they feel. And you're not going to be able to reason with that. What you want to do is you want to get out of that bad guy role. You want to allow that natural process to happen. So like, you're going to have to let him step in it, basically, in a way that he knows he stepped in it and it's not your fault. So if he says, I'm going to show up for the kids' ball game or something like that, and then he just doesn't show up because he forgot, because he was sick the next day or whatever and overslept, whatever, you're going to have to sort of let some of that stuff start falling through the cracks And then when it does, I don't want you to scream and yell and say, "You're alcoholic. If you don't stop, don't do that." I just want you can express your sadness and you can say, "I'm really disappointed." And whatever it was that happened that fell through the cracks, and then let them handle that. So let them feel your emotions, but don't throw them at them, and it'll start to sink in and they will start to be able to see it. All right. I'm gonna pop one up, Weston, and you get ready for the next one. Okay. Oh, Weston got one. Okay. Carrie says, "My daughter is in treatment for the second time. She wants to change. I know you say for them not to come home, but it sure is there, is there other options? What help can you offer?" So, we strongly advise not bring adult children back home after treatment. It almost always ends badly, even if they're really trying on the recovery, because what happens is it's just so hard for you as the parent not to fall into the, like, monitoring role. Every time she sleeps in, if she misses a meeting, if she's not doing her meditations, you're gonna be on edge, right? Because you're having that front row seat and you're gonna be nervous, and you might start asking her about it or nagging her about it. And even if you can resist doing that, you're gonna be feeling it, which means your energy is gonna be putting it out. If she's just, like, not eating healthy and she's not doing all the recommendations, it's like you can't stop being the mom, right? And you probably have some hypervigilance because you've been going through this with your daughter, which would create that for someone. It's just really hard to get out of that role, and it just doesn't work well. So, um, the preference for us is sober living. Going from a treatment to a sober living, a good women's sober living, that would be the ideal setting. If that can't happen, then if it's time for your daughter and she's well enough, she's leaving treatment and maybe she's ready to, like, get a job, part-time job or something. And if she's working and helping support herself and you want to maybe help a little bit, even financially or whatever, as long as she's helping herself and you're helping, then you're fine, you're helping. I still think that's a better scenario than having them back in your house. Because if not only it doesn't even work well when things go well with the addiction is what I'm saying. It just doesn't usually, because they want to be adults. You can't stop being the parent. It's just hard. But if things start slide backwards as far as the addiction, then it's going to be really, really bad. And once they're in, and it's really hard to get them out. So if you can think of something else to do the something else. If she can find a roommate in recovery. I understand that sometimes there's absolutely no other option, and I get that, but whatever other options there are, I would look at those first. What's our next one, Weston? I like it. You're on top of it. "My husband has been an alcoholic now for 15 years. He's successful at work and supports us. No one believes he has a problem because of his success. I feel so much raised. Plus, I'm a caregiver to my son." Is there a second part of that? If there's not, that's okay. I can sort of speak to that. This is exactly the kind of alcoholic that I see in my practice all the time. It's like, I call them like a high functioning alcoholic. That's not really a clinical term. That's not like a real thing, but we all kind of have an idea what that means. Most of the people I see in my office that have alcohol problems, they're very successful. They're business people. They're doctors. They're lawyers. They're run Ironman. Like they have a lot of their life together in a lot of ways. And the first place the alcoholism is going to show up is at home. And the first person that's going to see it is the spouse. And so it creates this bad dynamic because the person stays in denial. They see you as the problem because they're like, "What are you talking about? I make money. I take care of this family." All this stuff is what they see. And literally, if they told other people in their life, like, "I think I have an alcohol problem," those people would probably say, "No, man, you're crazy. I drink more than you." And then you have other people like validating it the wrong way. And so it is very difficult for them to listen to just you and take you seriously. I always say it like you have to let the consequences happen somewhere besides you. If you're the primary family member, like if you're the spouse, if you're the parent, if you're the main one, you need those consequences come somewhere besides you because they discredit you as like, "Oh, She's always upset. Oh, she's never happy with anything I do. Oh, she just worries all the time. Like they just find a way to dismiss you and minimize your concerns. So it's kind of like that um, comment we had a while ago where I said you're going to have to let some of those things fall through the cracks. And as crazy as it sounds, if you can align with your loved one and be empathetic when that happens, don't fix it, but be empathetic and let them know you're on their side, he'll see it faster. What else we got, Weston? Miss Reedinger, stepdaughter, 32, habitual drug user for 10 years, is in rehab again. She has no car, job, phone, or money. What should she be responsible? Still paying for phone she lost. She will want it all. Okay. So basically, your adult, I think daughter, you said, is not adulting, right? She's in rehab again, probably hasn't been adulting for a long time and pays for no things. Kind of like I said earlier, if your daughter gets out and she's being sober and she's contributing, like she's working and she's paying for some things, then I think it's okay for you to jump in there and help. I like to say if they take a step, you take a step. They take 10 steps, you take 10 steps. As long as they're doing their part, you're not gonna be resentful about it. You're gonna feel like you're actually helping, which usually is an indicator that you're actually helping and not enabling. When you feel resentful and you feel like they're not doing their part and you're doing everything, when you feel resentment about helping someone, that's when you know you're enabling. So that's probably how I would gauge that. If she wants to help some, you help some. Dylan says, she's using around half a gram to a full gram a day. How do I go about setting financial boundaries with her if she is the one currently working? Her job is basically just paying for her use now. You're not going to be able to do that, Dylan. If she's the one making the money, even if she wasn't the one making the money, you're probably never going to be able to set some kind of budget for someone's drug use because it just doesn't play by those rules. So I hate to say it, but Dylan, but the answer here is for you to figure out how to get yourself some financial independence. I'm not saying you have to leave this person. I'm not saying you have to give up on them, but you need to create some financial safety for yourself. And I know that may be complicated and hard, but that's what you're going to have to do. You will not be able to set some kind of limit on the amount of money that that person spends on their drugs. I know that that seems more than reasonable, and it is reasonable, but addiction just doesn't play by reasonable rules. Clearly, if this person is already spending all their money on the substances, then it's just not working. The addiction is overriding any kind of self-preservation, paying bills, any of that. What else we got, Weston? Question, how do I best approach the subject of addiction with my 30-year-old son who is addicted to marijuana and other drugs and alcohol, but is high functioning, running his own CBD shop? You don't. If he's really high functioning, things are working really well for him, there's no other evidence in his life he's seeing that there's an addiction, and it's just coming from you, all you're going to do is get yourself in that role where you have no credibility, because he's going to literally think you're out of your mind. You're crazy. You have to wait not until they hit bottom, but you have to at least get to where the cons start to outweigh the pros. The scale does have to tip. If it is still mostly working for them, there's just no way you're going to be able to get through to somebody and say, this is a problem. It is going to have to start to cause some uncomfortableness. So I would not have any conversations about it until he is experiencing some level of uncomfortableness. And when you do have that conversation, I would avoid using the word addiction unless he uses the word addiction, because he's going to think you're overreacting, because in his mind, it's like, I'm fine. I'm running my business. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What? You're crazy. That's what he's going to think if you bring it up and there's no other evidence. And don't send any articles about being bad. Don't do that. What else we got, Weston? Sarah says, my spouse is in treatment. What is my role while he is there? And when he first comes home, things to talk about and not to talk about. This is a really great question, and I'm going to answer it for you, Sarah, but I actually have a whole video on this, how to support someone that's just out of treatment or in early recovery, where I go into a lot more detail about this. But I think what your role is to stay out of the bad guy role, be the teammate, and probably the most helpful thing you can do is not make every single conversation about the addiction. Try not to be weird. Try not to be all like walking on eggshells, because that makes them feel weird and uncomfortable. Treat them normally, still a normal person, still a grown up. You still talk to them. There's this, when I used to work in detox, one of the other co-counselors there, his name is Doug. He'd been in recovery for 100 years, Doug had. And he's just funny. He would talk about when he first got sober and he come home. I don't know if this is true, but this is a story he used to tell in the groups we were in. But he said, I'd literally pick up the newspaper to read it, and there'd be holes cut out because there'd be stories that they thought might trigger me if I read them or something. I don't know if that's true, but you kind of get to the point, like, try to just be normal and regular and talk about regular things, whatever you would normally talk about. And then if you can do that when the subject comes up of addiction and recovery, and you can be sort of like calm about it, and you don't talk about it too long, you don't push it to further than they want to push it, then they'll get more and more comfortable talking to you about it. Your goal is to, number one, not talk about it all the time. And number two, when you do, make sure it is not an uncomfortable conversation. Then they'll see that that's safe and that that's a topic that can be talked about, and it's not going to go over top. It's not going to bring up past stuff. It's not going to start an argument. You're not going to start pushing for things they're not ready and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that's helpful. And definitely check out that other video, because there's more things and I go more in depth into it. Hey, Weston, after this question, go ahead. You can pop it up there. After this one, make sure that we get all of the ones that people posted early. And see if you can find one from the lady named Sharon, because I promised her I would answer that one. So Secret says, hey, Amber, I normally locked myself in the spare bedroom when he is drinking. This is the first time I locked the door, and he didn't like it. He said some hurtful things, and he doesn't talk to me now. So my guess is, because you're saying this, Secret, is that he gets nasty when he's drinking. Is it like I'm locking the door because he gets nasty, he says mean things, or maybe he just gets to that, like, where he's like following you around and pestering you and just bothering you, and you just wanting some peace and quiet? It's okay to just let him be upset with you. If you're drawing the boundary and you're like, no, I just needed some peace and quiet and I was going to sleep, then you're just going to have to let him get over that, I would say. Unless you're doing that, and I don't get the impression that you are, but unless that his big trigger is like when you withdraw from him and you're almost doing it as a punishment or to get under his skin. I don't get that impression, because it doesn't sound like it based on what you said. But if that's why you're doing it, then don't do that. But probably you're just trying to get some peace of mind or whatever. And we'll pop one up here while you're looking, Weston. How do you know if someone is really close to conquering their addiction? And if this disease is predictable, then can you truly determine how far away they are when they find long-term recovery? That's a great question. I do think addiction is predictable in the way that usually people can tell me sort of what's going on right now, and I can usually say what's about to happen, what's coming next. I'm not good at predicting overall. Like, if you lined up 10 people with addiction problems, I probably couldn't tell you this one, and this one is going to make it eventually and have long-term recovery, and this one isn't, like in a big sense, like just saying who's going to get it and who's not. But I can usually tell you if we're on that track today or not, or if we're close to being on that track. The more change talk you hear, the more humility you hear, those are all huge signs that someone is in the recovery process, even if they're having some back and forth, but you can tell that they are working on it, that they do know that it's a problem, that they are taking steps to figure it out, even if they're not having all the right answers. That's a really good sign. We did that one. That might be all the questions. Is that all the questions? Wow, I can't believe we got to them. Very good. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays for whatever you celebrate. We will be on track next week. I will be on here Thursday at 1 live again, just like always. So I will see you soon. Bye, everybody. Merry Christmas.